Have you ever noticed how quickly everything collapses the moment you start defending yourself? Someone questions your intentions, your abilities, your character, and suddenly you're the one scrambling, even if you've done nothing wrong. Today, we break that cycle. With the timeless elegance of Arsène Lupin, I'll show you the psychological trick that flips power instantly, without arguing, without proving, without defending. When someone attacks you with words, questions your integrity, or challenges your capability, there is an instinct that erupts almost instantly inside you. The instinct to defend, to explain, to prove. It feels noble, rational, even necessary. But the moment you say, "Let me explain," something subtle and dangerous happens. Your status drops, your power slips, and without realizing it, you place yourself beneath the very person who challenged you. This is the trap most people fall into, not because they're weak, but because defending feels like the natural thing to do. But natural doesn't mean powerful. Imagine the psychological shift taking place. The accuser stands tall. You lean forward. They question. You answer. They press. You justify. In this dynamic, only one person is leading the interaction, and it isn't you. Defending yourself means accepting their frame, their narrative, their authority. You enter the courtroom they built, playing the role they assigned. And in the eyes of everyone watching, whether it's one person or a room full of them, you are no longer in the position of strength. You are the defendant. Now Arsène Lupin would never allow such a thing, would he? Picture him walking into a room with that effortless confidence. Someone accuses him. They throw a sharp allegation like a dagger. The average person would shield themselves, flinch, react. But Lupin, he would smile, slowly, knowingly. He understands something most people never learn. Defending yourself is an admission of vulnerability. It signals that their opinion matters enough to unsettle you. It reveals that their words pierced your composure. And in that moment, you hand them control of the scene. People rarely analyze this dynamic because it happens in microseconds. A question, a raised eyebrow, a judgmental tone, and suddenly you're explaining where you were, why you did something, why you said something, why you didn't say something. You think you're clarifying the truth. But socially, psychologically, and strategically, you're lowering yourself. Think of social status as a silent negotiation that happens in every interaction. Whoever reacts first loses ground. Whoever seeks approval yields power. Whoever explains becomes subordinate. A king does not defend his crown. A master thief does not plead innocence. And someone who knows their worth does not scramble to justify their actions. This isn't about arrogance. It's about understanding perception. When you defend yourself too quickly, people subconsciously assume there must be something to defend. Guilt is not established by evidence, but by energy. Nervous explanations, long clarifications, emotional reactions, these create a sense of insecurity. And insecurity is interpreted as truth. Meanwhile, someone who stands tall, unbothered, amused even, signals confidence so profound that the accusation bounces off them like a pebble against steel. Lupin would never respond with panic. He would never respond with desperation. Instead, he would control the rhythm of the exchange. The moment someone demands an explanation, he redirects. The moment someone expects a justification, he reframes. He treats accusations as invitations to display elegance, wit, and psychological mastery, and in doing so, he flips the power dynamic so completely that the accuser is the one who begins to doubt themselves. Because here's the secret. When you refuse to defend yourself, people start defending you in their own minds. They search for reasons why you're unbothered. They assume confidence means innocence. They believe silence means strength. The lack of reaction becomes more powerful than any explanation could ever be. And suddenly the person who confronted you becomes the one who feels uncertain, exposed, less grounded than before. In social dynamics, composure is currency. Silence is a shield. Poise is persuasion. And the refusal to defend is not avoidance. It is dominance wrapped in elegance. The kind of dominance Lupin wielded with a mere lift of his eyebrow and a perfectly timed smile. There is a particular kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, and certainly doesn't rush to explain itself. It is the kind of power Arsène Lupin carries effortlessly, the power of reframing, redirecting, and elevating any situation with charm instead of conflict. When someone challenges you, The ordinary reaction is to engage on their terms. You start defending, clarifying, protesting, but Lupin would never do that. Instead, he invokes what we'll call his law of elegant power, a rule so subtle yet so transformative that it dismantles confrontation without ever lifting a defensive finger. Imagine this. Someone aims a verbal spear straight at you. They accuse you of wrongdoing, question your competence, imply something about your character. Most people would catch that spear and immediately start explaining why it's not true. But the moment you do that, they have you. They've placed you in the exact position they wanted. Reactive, flustered, and trapped inside a frame you didn't choose. But Lupin, he never catches the spear. He steps aside so gracefully that the spear hits the floor harmlessly, leaving the attacker confused about why it never reached its mark. His trick is psychological. He knows that when you defend, you shrink. When you redirect, you expand. Lupin's power begins with one simple belief. Every accusation is an opportunity, not a threat. Not an opportunity to explain, but an opportunity to redefine the entire atmosphere of the interaction. Instead of accepting the frame, he creates a new one. Instead of responding to the accusation, he addresses something bigger, wittier, more elegant. And because he maintains control of the narrative, everyone around him unconsciously follows his lead. Picture him in a room full of people. A rival loudly declares, "I know what you did, Lupin." The room turns, tension builds. A lesser man would scramble to deny it. But Lupin would simply adjust his cufflinks, glance upward as if admiring the architecture, and say something like, "My friend, if my reputation troubles you, I recommend acquiring one you enjoy more than mine." Suddenly, the accusation dissolves into laughter, surprise, admiration. He didn't defend himself. He elevated the conversation to a realm where the accuser can't reach him. This is the essence of Lupin's law. Never wrestle in the mud when you can dance above it. You see, the moment you start defending yourself, you enter a world of seriousness. You attempt to fix perceptions, but seriousness is heavy, and heavy people lose battles quickly. Lupin stays light. That is his secret weapon. He floats above the accusation, not because he ignores it, but because he transforms it into something too small to touch him. He leads the emotional energy of the room, and people naturally align with the person who leads. Redecating doesn't mean dodging, it means taking the steering wheel. If someone questions your intentions, Lupin doesn't insist they're wrong. He reframes the conversation so that their question seems irrelevant, outdated, or even humorous. If someone challenges his credibility, he shifts the spotlight to their insecurity without ever naming it. If someone tries to corner him with logic, he escapes with charm so fluid that logic can't pin him down. And the brilliance of this method is that it works because people are not persuaded by explanations, they are persuaded by energy. They respond to confidence, not correctness. When Lupin remains calm, light, and slightly amused, he signals something powerful. He has nothing to fear. And when you behave as though you have nothing to fear, others start believing there is nothing to fear. This is how he flips power. Not through aggression, not through confrontation, but through elegance. Through the subtle art of being untouchable. It's not about out-arguing someone. It's about placing yourself in a psychological position where you don't need to argue at all. When you redirect rather than defend, you force the accuser to adjust to you. They lose the rhythm, they lose the authority, and they lose the certainty that made them attack you in the first place. Suddenly, you are the one shaping the tone, the mood, the direction of the conversation. And that is what true power looks like. Not force, but influence. Not resistance, but flow. This is Lupin's method. Stay above, stay light, stay in command of the frame, and watch the world follow your lead. There is a strange truth about human psychology, a truth that Arsène Lupin understood better than most. People are not drawn to explanations. They are drawn to mysteries. The more you justify yourself, the more ordinary you become. The less you explain, the more intriguing you appear. And in a world where perception shapes power, mystery is a weapon far sharper than logic. Lupin uses it the way a master swordsman uses a blade, not recklessly, but with precision, timing, and a certain theatrical grace. Think about what happens the moment someone questions you. Your instinct might tell you to clarify everything immediately, to fill every silence with proof, to erase any doubts before they grow. But the truth is, doubts don't grow because you stay silent. They grow because you sound nervous, uncertain, or too eager to convince. When you rush to justify, people feel the tension in your tone, the urgency in your words. They don't hear your innocence, they hear your fear, and fear becomes the new story they believe. Now imagine Lupin in that same moment. An accusation floats toward him like a wisp of smoke. Instead of blowing it away with frantic explanations, he lets the smoke swirl around him, becoming part of the atmosphere he controls. He doesn't deny, he doesn't prove, he doesn't clarify, he smiles, subtly, knowingly, and in that smile, people sense something powerful. Confidence. Confidence, so deep that explanation becomes unnecessary. Mystery is not silence. Mystery is intentional silence, the kind that forces others to lean in, to wonder, to reassess. When Lupin withholds information, he's not avoiding the question, he's placing the burden of curiosity on others. They start trying to decode him. They begin creating narratives in their minds. And here's the twist. People tend to imagine things far more flattering, far more impressive, far more legendary than any explanation he could have given himself. This is the magic of strategic ambiguity. It turns the accuser into the confused one. It makes the audience shift from judgment to fascination. And it turns you from the defendant into the character no one can fully grasp. Most people think the purpose of communication is to inform, but the purpose of mastery in communication is to influence. Information is cheap. Mystery is priceless. Information ends conversations. Mystery opens them. Information answers questions. Mystery creates them. And in any social interaction, the one who creates the questions, not the one who answers them, holds the upper hand. Lupin knows that the moment he explains himself, the spell breaks. He becomes just another man defending himself. But when he remains lightly evasive, gently amused, impossible to corner, he becomes something else entirely. He becomes unforgettable. He becomes the enigma people can't stop thinking about. Why does this work? Because the human mind hates uncertainty. It desperately wants to fill gaps, resolve questions, complete puzzles. And when someone doesn't explain themselves, the mind starts working overtime to fill in the blanks. It creates stories that often elevate the mysterious figure rather than diminish them. That's why celebrities become more alluring when they say less. That's why leaders seem more powerful when they don't reveal everything. And that's why Lupin glows brighter the moment he says nothing at all. Mystery carries an energy, a magnetism that pulls people toward you rather than pushing them away. It shifts you from reactive to untouchable. It makes people hesitate before challenging you again because they're not sure what lies behind your calm exterior. And hesitation is power, doubt is power, ambiguity is power. When Lupin refuses to justify himself, he isn't hiding, he's leading, he's shaping perception, not with facts, but with presence. He teaches us that the strongest position in any confrontation is not the one where you present 1,000 explanations, but the one where you make others question why you don't need to explain anything at all. Mystery is the aura of someone who knows their value. It is the silent language of confidence. And when you use it, you stop playing defense and start playing a different game entirely. The game where your silence speaks louder than any defense ever could. In every interaction, whether it's a casual conversation, a confrontation, or a subtle clash of egos, there is a frame. A frame is the invisible lens through which both people interpret what's happening. Whoever controls that frame controls the meaning of the moment. And Arsène Lupin, with his unmatched elegance and psychological brilliance, understood this more deeply than anyone. He never let others decide the story. He never allowed accusations, judgments, or expectations to define him. He controlled the narrative. And by controlling the narrative, he controlled the power. Most people live reactively. Someone makes a comment, and they respond. Someone challenges them, and they defend. Someone sets the tone, and they adapt. But Lupin does the opposite. He creates the tone. He sets the atmosphere. He chooses the meaning behind every word exchanged. And because he does that, every confrontation becomes his stage, not his battlefield. Imagine someone walks up to you and says, "You're wrong," or "You're lying," or "You did this." The default reaction is to deny, to argue, or to justify yourself. But the moment you try to prove anything, you've already stepped into their frame. They have positioned themselves as the judge, and you as the one begging for acquittal. You're no longer equals. You're a participant in a narrative they designed, a narrative where you are already on trial. But Lupin, he would never accept such a role. He would never allow anyone to hand him a script he didn't write. Instead, he flips the power instantly by creating a frame so unexpected, so confident, so self-assured, that the accuser suddenly feels off balance. Picture someone accusing Lupin in front of a crowd. Instead of responding directly, he might tilt his head and say, "How fascinating that you think so. Tell me, what made you arrive at such an interesting conclusion?" Suddenly, the accuser goes from attacker to performer, forced to explain themselves. The spotlight shifts. The pressure flips. Lupin becomes the one evaluating them, and everyone watching feels the shift without fully understanding how it happened. This is the mastery of controlling the narrative. It's not about overpowering someone with arguments. It's about positioning yourself so that they must dance to your rhythm, not you to theirs. You decide what matters. You decide what the moment means, and by doing so, you become untouchable. The reason this works so well is because humans instinctively follow the person who appears the most composed, the most certain, the most grounded in their own reality. When someone tries to pull you into their frame, maybe to embarrass you, belittle you, or expose you, they expect resistance, they expect tension, they expect you to push back. But when you don't push back, when you glide sideways and paint a new context with your words, they lose their footing. Their attack no longer fits. Their accusation no longer lands. Their confidence begins to crack because the environment they created has vanished. They are now standing inside your story, not theirs. Lupin uses this technique not with force, but with elegance. He doesn't confront frames. He replaces them. He doesn't argue for dominance. He exudes it. He doesn't respond to attacks. He transforms them into scenes where he shines brightest. And here's what makes this approach so powerful. People always follow the stronger narrative. Facts can be debated. Logic can be challenged. But a compelling frame delivered with charm, confidence, and calm becomes the truth people believe. They align with whoever appears to be the center of gravity in the interaction, and Lupin always makes himself that center. When you control the narrative, accusations become irrelevant. Judgments slide off. Pressure dissolves. The dynamic shifts so dramatically that even those who questioned you begin to wonder why they ever doubted you at all. The person who tried to corner you suddenly feels like they're the one under inspection, because controlling the narrative is not about deception. It's about leadership. It's about showing through your behavior and presence that you are not someone who reacts, you are someone who defines, and the world instinctively respects those who define. This is how Lupin flips power. Not with louder words, but with stronger framing. Not by defending himself, but by guiding others into a perspective where he cannot be diminished. Not by proving his innocence, but by making the accusation itself seem out of place, too small for someone of his stature. To control the narrative is to control the entire game, and Lupin never plays a game he cannot win. And so, as the night settles over our story, one truth glimmers brighter than the Parisian moon itself. Power does not belong to the loudest voice or the most detailed explanation. It belongs to the one who refuses to kneel before accusation, to the one who redirects instead of reacts, to the one who wraps themselves in the quiet allure of mystery, and to the one who writes the narrative rather than reading from someone else's script. This is why Lupin always walks away untouched. Not because the world never questions him, but because he understands the psychology beneath every question. He knows that defending yourself lowers your status, that elegant redirection lifts you above conflict, that mystery shields you where logic would fail, and that controlling the frame turns every interaction into your stage. You are never powerless unless you choose to be reactive. You are never cornered unless you accept the role of the accused. In the elegant dance of social dynamics, the moment you stop defending and start leading, the world begins to orbit around your composure instead of your explanation. So remember this, not as a trick, but as a philosophy. You don't win by arguing. You don't win by proving. You win by remaining untouchable, unpredictable, and unwavering in your self-possession. You win by becoming the kind of person whose confidence does all the speaking, long before your words ever do. Because in the end, the greatest power isn't in the defense, it's in the poise of someone who no longer needs to defend at all.